Hey guys, how we doing? All right, so I am using a new setup tonight, so let me know if you guys can hear me okay here. Let me know how I sound. I hope everybody's doing well. Your mic sounds great. Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. All right. So, guys, we are here. The last cram session before the big finale next Thursday. I'm super excited. It feels like this is just absolutely flown by. I don't know whether it's just the fact that, we're not all in lockdown right now like we were last year, or whatever it is, but it feels like this cram season has just absolutely flown. But it's really, really exciting. So kind of just some updates before we get rolling. We are going to be having our 5-hour cram finale next Thursday. That would be May 6th. That's the day before the AP European History exam. So that's going to last from 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's 2 p.m. Pacific for my West Coast people. And it's going to run until 10 p.m. Eastern. So 5 hours. I'm going to be here the whole time. I'll be hosting the whole thing. It's going to be a little bit more informal. We're going to be a little less crunched for time. It's going to be way more of us sort of hanging out and working through whatever you guys want to work through. So with that being said, one thing that I did, and I published this on the Discord, or I guess I posted this on the Discord. Published doesn't really make sense. I posted this on the Discord on, I think it was like Tuesday. It was a Google form link that was it was pretty much what do you guys want to see on the cram finale. So it asked you guys, like, how are you feeling about the exam right now? It asked you guys, what do you want to prioritize? Do you want to prioritize content, or do you want to prioritize like test review? What content do you want to focus on? Period 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then what part of the exam do we want to cover the most? So right now, what we're looking like is that most of you guys want to really focus more on content review. I think it's like right now we're sitting at like 65% of responses want content review over test review, which I think kind of makes sense. I think that's where most people have most of their anxiety. And then in terms of content itself, it's looking like period 2 is really going to be what people want to cover, which again, I think totally makes sense. So period 2 is absolutism, constitutionalism, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the old regime, and the French Revolution / Napoleon. So that's a lot of stuff. Period 2 is probably the densest, just in terms of raw content knowledge, the densest period of the bunch. So that totally makes sense. And then in terms of what people are feeling most anxious about for the actual test, again, I think this totally makes sense. It's a DBQ and it's LEQ. Now, that being said, we are going to spend at least an hour, maybe a little bit less, but probably about an hour looking at multiple choice. My plan for that is that we are going to have, I'm going to have a set of multiple choice questions that I'm going to just push out to you guys. And I'm going to say, hey, let's spend like 10 minutes doing these multiple choice questions. Then we're going to get back together and then we're going to go over them together kind of as a big group. And I'll talk about why the correct answers are the correct answers and so on and so on and so on. Now, the cram finale is going to look a little bit different in terms of like communication between you and me. There is not going to be a chat on Vimeo. The big reason for that is because the cram finale for Euro last year had 400 people in it, maybe a little bit more. And the chat, while we ended up using the chat for probably most of the session, it was just like going. It was really, really hard to keep track of. And it really ended up getting really off topic, which is, super understandable when you have 400 people in a single place talking to each other. I'm sure we've all like watched Twitch streams with 500 people and how crazy chat can get there. So kind of very similar thing. I'm gonna try to. I think there is a plan and I think it's mostly going to be around the Discord for how we're gonna like communicate. So I'm gonna have the Discord open for sure, and that's really where I'm gonna be looking at comments and stuff like that. But there definitely will be some level of interaction between us. It's just not going to be through Vimeo, or I guess through the website. But we use Vimeo to host these streams. Any questions for me about anything between now and the Cram finale, and then the actual Cram finale? And another thing I'll say is that there are going to be breaks worked in. The breaks are there for you guys to like go and grab a bite to eat, to go and just like stand up and take a break. And of course the breaks are there for me as well. I'm going to be in there for 5 hours, and I'm definitely going to need a few breaks worked in there. So expect like some 15-minute breaks, some 10-minute breaks, kind of sprinkled throughout. But also another thing is don't feel any pressure that you have to absolutely be super present the whole time. If it's one of the things where you just need to walk away for half an hour, go walk away for half an hour. Okay. It's a 5-hour stream, where there's going to be plenty of time to answer whatever questions you need to, right? Take care of that mental health, prioritize that mental health. That is the best thing that you can do the night before the exam, honestly. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into things. So today we are going to be spending the next hour talking about the long essay question. And the long essay question is only applying to some of you guys. It's only going to apply to those of you that are taking the written portion of the test, not the online version. All right, Elena, you asked, will the questions and answers section still be available on the final Cram test? I'm not sure what you mean by the final Cram test. Well, the questions and answers section. Are you talking about the review that we did before each or after each unit review? Because as far as I'm aware, those are not going anywhere. As far as I'm aware. But in terms of the stuff that we're going to be doing on the Cram finale, 5-hour Cram. Yeah. So in terms of the Cram finale, and I hope this answers your question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have kind of I'm going to put together sections of the different tests. So I'm going to have like probably 10 to 20 multiple choice questions, AP style multiple choice questions that I'm going to post a link for you guys. So those are going to be, you guys are going to have access to those because those will be posted publicly online. And then we'll go over them together. Same thing with like the DBQ and the LEQ. We are going to be using pretty much all of the College Board released materials because that is the easiest thing that you guys and I can both access, right? That I can access, and then I know that you guys can access. And I know some of you guys have probably like absolutely crushed all of the released exam stuff from College Board. So it might be like a repeat for some of you guys, but the reality is like that's the easiest stuff that I can release to you guys. Like I said, one of the things I'm going to work on this summer is actually no, this session is not 5 hours long. This is just an hour. This is ending at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next Thursday, May 6th, that's going to be the 5-hour session. That starts at 5 p.m. Eastern. But one of the things I'm going to do this summer is I am going to create some AP style multiple choice questions strictly for Fiveable, because one of the things that I think that we've all struggled with is accessing AP test review material. And I want to make that a little bit more accessible for you guys and for me, honestly, because I have AP style questions, but they're AP style questions that like I've purchased from like a website, or I've gotten from a review book that I can't actually like share with you guys, right? Because it's copyright infringement and stuff like that. So it's going to be stuff that I actually create to kind of avoid that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into things though. So we are going to be looking at the LEQ today, and the LEQ is the second part of the that longer written portion of the exam, right? So the exam is broken up kind of into two parts. And you'll have a break between each two parts, right? So it's kind of like the SAT in that way. So you'll have your part one is going to be 55 multiple choice questions, which will take you guys 55 minutes. This is for the written portion, by the way. Okay, this is not for the online portion. The online portion is going to look a little different. But if you guys are in here, I assume you guys are taking the written portion, because the online portion does not have an LEQ this year. So while if you're taking the online portion, that's awesome. I think you're going to have some really, really relevant stuff in here. But just know, if you're taking the online portion, you are not going to have an LEQ. Okay, you are not having an LEQ. If you're taking the online portion, it is going to be 2 extra short answer questions. All right, so you'll have a total of 5 short answer questions that you do. But for the written portion of the exam, it's 55 multiple choice questions and then 3 short answers questions. Right? Short answer question 1 and short answer question 2 are mandatory. And then you have a choice between 2 short answer questions for your third one. Then there's going to be a break. And then there's going to be the DBQ section and the LEQ section. Okay. We're going to talk about the LEQ section today. It has a lot of similarities to the DBQ. The way that I kind of like to view the LEQ is that the LEQ is a DBQ without any of the actual like documents. You don't have any documents. You don't have any. You don't have anything that you actually have to like analyze. They give you a prompt and then they say, "Have at it, answer it." They actually give you a choice of prompts. But let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here. Share my screen here. It's a new computer, so I'm having to like wait. All right, here we go. Got it. Holy moly, it is windy. All right. We should be able to all see that. Can we see that okay? Let me know if you cannot, please. All right, cool. Awesome. Awesome. All right, like I said, new computer here, and I'm still getting used to it. All right, there we go. All right, cool beans. All right, so as always, we know that this is being recorded, and this is being recorded, and this is your names and all that good stuff are going to be shared. So one of the things that I'm going to do for you guys real quick is Amanda, who is the CEO of Fiveable, wanted us to share with you guys this video that she put together talking about some stuff that's happening within the Fiveable community. So I'm going to play that for us real quick. I'm hoping that it will share the sound as well. I'm hoping that it will share the sound as well. All right. So this is a really, really cool opportunity for those of you guys that are looking to, of course, make a little bit of cashola, but also as a way to kind of there we go. Okay. As a way to also kind of get more involved with Fiveable. So like Amanda was saying, a lot of some of the social media interns and some of the interns that work within Fiveable were actually found doing promotions and stuff like this. And I hate to be that cliche teacher that's like, oh, this is a really, really good opportunity and it looks really good on your college applications. But honestly, it really is a really cool opportunity. Fiveable is an awesome company. As someone that works for Fiveable, they're a really, really great company to work for, even just as an intern. So if it's something you're interested in, definitely consider it. If you have questions, reach out on the Discord page or through the Fiveable website, and someone will definitely help you out there. All right, so normally this screen here is full of stuff that's coming up, but we really only have one thing left, and that's the Cram finale happening May 6th at 5 p.m., which is just absolutely wild to think about. Cram finale is happening at 5 p.m. on May 6th. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, if that's something that you guys want to be a part of, it is going to be a really, really cool opportunity. Another really, really cool thing is if this is something that like you've got some friends who you're taking AP Euro with, they can join this thing for $5. It's only going to be $5 to get a pass for the Cram finale, which I think is super, super worth it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've already talked a lot about it, but I am honestly really, really excited for it. We'll have my kind of legendary DBQ topic predictions, where I predict the topic of the DBQ. I was pretty spot on last year. I don't need to kind of show off or anything like that, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's always a really, really good time, and by the end of 5 hours, everybody is just a little bit feeling a little bit better about taking this thing the next day. All right, so what are we going to be doing today? The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to review exactly what is on the exam. So we'll look at we'll look at you know, what's happening on the actual paper version. Real quick, is anybody in here that is not taking the paper version? That is not taking the paper version. That's here just to kind of get a little bit more info, but is taking the online version. Is that anybody in here? Let me know in chat if it is. Let me know in chat. All right, Elena, you are taking the online version. Okay, so for those of you guys that are taking the online version, remember, you're not going to have to do an LEQ. However, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about in here is going to apply to you because you're going to have a huge portion of your exams is going to be the short answer questions. And the LEQ, in a lot of ways, is just a beefed up version of a short answer question. It really, really is. So I do think you guys are going to get a lot of information on here, but just remember, you're not going to have to take an LEQ. You're not going to have to write an LEQ. All right, so we're going to talk about what an LEQ is. We're going to look at the LEQ rubric. We're going to talk about how do you actually go about picking a question. We're going to talk about quick tips, and then we're going to look at an LEQ example. All right, so what is actually on the exam? So reminders, guys, this is only for the paper version. I'm going to keep saying it, but there are 4 parts to the exam. The exam date for the paper version is May 7th. If you guys, for those of you that are taking the online version, we are going to be having a watch party for the both the night before both the online dates. All right, it's just going to be a repeat of the 5-hour cram session, but that's going to be pretty fun. I'll be in and out of there as well, so it will be a good time. But for the paper version, and for the online version, you're going to have to do 55 multiple choice questions and 3 short answer questions. And then for the paper version, it's then a DBQ and an LEQ. For the online version, it is a DBQ and then 2 more short answer questions. So, and like I said, an LEQ is really sort of a beefed up version of a short answer question. So I know that you guys might have trouble looking at some of these rubrics and slides and everything. What I'm going to do is probably tomorrow, I'm going to get on the Discord and I'm going to post all of these links. I'm going to make a really big post kind of highlighting really, really useful links as we look up to the last week before the exam. And another thing I'm really going to do as well is be way more active in the Discord. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to try to be there pretty much as I can be, answering your questions in this final week leading up to the exam. If you guys want me, and you know, I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you guys want me to read any of your responses, your DBQs, your LEQs, your short answer questions, and give you guys some feedback, I'm happy to do that. Okay. Now I might say, hey, I've got, 30 short answer questions that I'm reading right now. But I am happy to do that. You know, this is all stuff like I want to help you guys out. I want to make sure we're all feeling super prepared. So if that's something that you guys want me to do, you want me to read your short answer questions, your LEQs, your DBQs, I'm happy to do that. Just DM me on Discord, ping me in the server, and I'm happy to do that for you guys. Anyway, back to the LEQ here. So the LEQ, this is the final portion of the exam, okay? This is answering a single question with a focus that focuses on a larger historical topic, okay? And the thing with the LEQ is they give you 3 choices. They give you 3 choices and you pick the choice that you most want to answer. So that's kind of the nice thing about the LEQ. And in fact, it used to be that they only gave you 2 choices. Now they've extended it to 3 choices. So it's kind of nice. It really is kind of nice. But we can kind of look at here exactly what they want you to do. All right. Students need to explain and analyze significant issues in European history. Students develop an argument supported by an analysis of historical evidence. The question choices focus on the same skill and the same reasoning process, which is comparison, causation, or continuity and change. But students choose from 3 options, each focusing on historical developments and processes from a different time range, okay? And this is kind of the cool thing about the LEQ is that each of the 3 different topics focus on a different historical time period. So option 1 is going to focus on 1450 to 1700. Option 2 is going to focus on 1648 to 1914. And then option 3 is going to be 1815 to 2001. All right, so option 1 is pretty much going to be period 1. Option 2 is going to be period 2 through period 3. And then option 3 is going to be period 3 through period 4. All right, so if you feel really, really confident about period 3, good news, it's entirely possible that questions 2 and questions 3 will have to do with period 3. But the idea behind this is that College Board really realizes that like you guys are not memorizing an entire history book here. And they're not really trying to get you to memorize an entire history book. In fact, really what they want you guys to do is they want you to kind of become experts in a specific field. So what I mean by that is they want you guys to really feel confident maybe about period 1. They maybe want you to feel really confident about periods 2 and periods 3, or periods 3 and periods 4, right? And then when you actually go to write the LEQ, you get to pick the topic that works best for you. Right. So if you're looking at the 3 options and you're like, all right, question 1, I don't know. Question 2, I'm not as sure on. Question 3, though, I really, really know. That's really what College Board wants you to do. We're going to look at some examples of some here in just a second. But one thing I do want to talk about is these historical thinking skills. And like I said, I know that this is really, really small. And I don't necessarily expect us to go through these. We went through the historical thinking skills in pretty good detail for the DBQ. But the historical thinking skills are the kind of the baseline. I like to think of them as like the big processes for how College Board wants you to think about history and think about AP history. And so there's 6 different skills. They all range in kind of different ways that we would think and understand history. So, developing and, working on analysis, building connections, looking at causes and effects, looking at development and processes, things like that. Okay. So they are really focused way more on understanding history from a very, very complex perspective. So the historical thinking skills kind of work their way into all of the different parts of the AP exam. But one of the things, if we go back to the previous slide here, one of the things that College Board really wants you guys to do is to think about history through, it's usually called CCOT. All right. And that's, or not CCOT, but comparison, causation, and then CCOT. So comparison, causation, or continuity and change over time. So thinking about historical processes through comparison, through causation, cause and effect, and then also through continuity and change over time. And the LEQ questions themselves are all going to be based around one of these three ideas. So it might ask you to compare and contrast 2 different historical events. It might ask you to think about how a historical event changed from, time period A to time period B. It might ask you guys to think about how did event A lead to event B. That is really doing more in-depth history, right? When you're able to think about the historical processes, the historical events in this larger scale. How did they influence each other? How are they similar? How are they different? All right, and that's what you're going to be doing with the LEQ. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the LEQ rubric, because the LEQ rubric is really the most kind of just like the DBQ rubric. The LEQ rubric is really, really important. And if you want to pull this rubric up right now, all you guys have to do is type in AP European History rubrics, and it will pop up right for you. It's going to be, I think it's like the second link. It's a PDF, and it will pop up right there for you. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we're going to find it's on the 4th page of this PDF packet. We're going to see the LEQ rubric. And the good news about this is that for those of you guys that are taking AP US History next year, or already took AP US History, the the College Board reuses the DBQ rubrics and the LEQ rubrics for both AP European History, AP World History, and AP US History. So that is a nice thing, is that when you take one of the AP histories, you really get a nice primer for all future AP histories. So the LEQ rubric has a total of 5 parts, okay, or excuse me, of 4 parts, and there are a total of 6 points that you can get. Okay, so there's kind of like the DBQ rubric. Some of these parts have multiple different points that are available for you guys. So let's talk about, first and foremost, the first point that's available for you guys here is the thesis and claim. This is just like the DBQ, okay? To earn this point for thesis and claim, you need to respond to the prompt with a historical defensible thesis/claim that establishes a proper line of reasoning. All right. To earn this point, the thesis must make a claim that responds to the prompt rather than just merely restating the actual question. All right. So what that means is that you guys need to not just restate the question, right? So, for example, if the question, is how did the events of World War I lead to the start of World War II? You can't just simply say the events of World War I led to the start of World War II, right? Because that doesn't really answer the question. All that does is take the question and rephrase it into a statement. All right. Instead, you need to actually give a historical defensible argument, right? So you might say instead that the economic depression and the general the general dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Versailles would eventually lead to the rise of the fascist rulers, or the fascist rulers of Germany and Italy, and which eventually caused World War II, right? Something like that, where you've presented claims, you presented a historical defensible argument that you can back up with evidence. All right, point B. Point 2 is contextualization. Okay, contextualization, just like the DBQ, provide a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. All right. And I know a lot of you guys really do struggle with this point. A lot of students really struggle with getting contextualization. The big thing to remember is that you need to link the historical context directly to the argument itself. So going back to that example of World War I leading to World War II, your historical context might be explaining the aftermath of World War I and the state that Europe was in, and then might even be talking about how give a little bit of primer on the rise of the fascist rulers of Germany and Italy, right? So you might say something along the lines of World War I was the most devastating war in world history, leading to unprecedented death, destruction, and economic damage to Europe. The Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, was very controversial and largely left Germany in poor economic conditions, right? Something like that. That's context. That's contextualization. That is within the scope of the argument itself, but also directly ties to what the question is asking you, right? A bad example of contextualization would be if you just talked about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, for example, right? You might say the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand caused war between Austria and Serbia that eventually brought the other world powers into a larger conflict known as World War I. Right? You might say, well, I explained how World War I started, but you didn't really connect that to the actual argument itself. Instead, what you did was that you explained a historical event, but that's not really what contextualization is about. Contextualization is about connecting that to what the question is actually asking of you. Okay. Do you have any questions about that? Because I know contextualization is a super, super sticky point. I know contextualization is a super, super sticky point. All right, if you got questions about it, throw it in the chat. All right, part C. This is part C and part D are both where you can earn upwards of 2 points for each. So part C, evidence. All right, you get 1 point if you provide specific examples of evidence relevant to the topic of the prompt. And you get a 2nd point if you support an argument in response to the prompt using specific and relevant examples of evidence. Okay, so if you just provide evidence that's relevant to the prompt, then you get a point. But you get 2 points if you actually actively use that evidence to defend your argument. All right. So I'll give you a good example of this. We're going to use that World War I example again. So if you say the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, left Germany in really, really poor economic conditions because of the massive war reparations that they had to pay, as well as caused great dissatisfaction with the German people because they had to take full blame for the war. That is a piece of evidence relevant to the prompt, right? That's a piece of evidence that's relevant to the larger prompt, okay? You would get a point for that. However, you would get that 2nd point if you then went on to say, these effects of the treaties of Versailles allowed somebody like Hitler to rise to power, who played on the economic destruction of the war and people's general fear and anger over the Treaty of Versailles, right? Instead of just presenting this piece of evidence, you then went on to actually explain how this leads to World War II, okay? Because if your argument is that World War I led to World War II by X, Y, and Z, you want to use that specific piece of evidence to actually talk about how it led to X, Y, and Z. Okay, part D. And if you have any questions about this as we're going, please ask them in the chat. All right, part D, same deal as before. You have access to 2 points here. So you get 1 point if you use historical reasoning, okay, that's our comparison, causation, and continuity and change over time, to frame or structure an argument that addresses the prompt, right? So if your argument is actually framed in a way that uses causation, comparison, or continuity and change over time, then you get a point. So we're going to use that World War I example again. World War I, the World War I example is asking you guys to look at causation, right? Because it's saying, how did World War I cause World War II? Okay. Your argument needs to be framed around cause and effect. All right. So you need to argue that the effects of World War I led to World War II, which means you should not just be talking about the events of World War I. You should be talking about how the events of World War I led to World War II. So if you structure your argument in that way, you will get that 1st point. Now, the 2nd point is a lot like that complex understanding point for the DBQ. And in fact, the first 3 words or first 4 words are demonstrates a complex understanding. Okay, so you get that 2nd point if you demonstrate a complex understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses the question. So pretty much this point, again, is a very subjective point. I think it's less subjective than the actual DBQ complex understanding point, but it's still not great. All right. And a good way that you can do this is by kind of going beyond those surface layer arguments and analysis of a historical process. So one of the ways that you could probably get this point for this World War I topic if you took a step back and you presented the idea that maybe the fascist leaders would have risen to power without the the effects of the Treaty of Versailles. Another way that you could get the complex understanding point is by talking about how the world learned a lesson from the Treaty of Versailles and took a direct opposite approach after the end of World War II by, instead of economically destroying countries, decided to economically rebuild them instead. And if you use the example of, like, we'll say Japan with the United States, or the United States repaired Japan economically, they're one of our greatest trade allies today. So that's another way that you could get this complex understanding point, is by kind of going beyond, right? Going beyond what the question is actually asking you, thinking about history from a more complex point. I think it's less subjective than the DBQ point. I still think it's pretty subjective. All right. So if you get a 5 out of 6 on the LEQ, you are still in great shape, I promise. All right, so that's the rubric. And, as before, you should know the rubric. You should love the rubric. It should be something that you should be able to just like throw together on your exam. You should be able to write it off the top of your head. But here are kind of my key takeaways from the LEQ rubric, okay? So you have a total of 6 points that you can earn. The thesis point and contextualization point are the same for the LEQ and the DBQ. Asks you to use evidence, but it is not provided to you. This is where you need your mental evidence bank. Now, one thing I'll say about this is that the readers of the LEQ, our AP readers of the LEQ, the guys and girls that are actually grading your LEQs, they realize that you are going to have limited evidence, right? You're not going to be some mastermind having the best evidence in the world, because not only are you doing this off the top of your head, you've also presumably done a whole entire exam before this. Okay, so they are really looking to just, do you have evidence present? It doesn't need to be the best evidence in the world, but you need to have evidence present. That's not to say that you don't need good evidence. You still need evidence that works within the confines of the prompt. However, you don't feel like you need to have the absolute best evidence in the world, right? So, don't think you need the super niche evidence, but it is really important to have a good, I always say you need a mental evidence bank. You need a mental evidence bank for all the major unit, or all the units, right? All the major events within all the units. And then lastly, there is a complex understanding point, right? This subjective point that is really, it's really up to the reader and the grader to determine whether you get it or not. However, the LEQ complex understanding point is a little less subjective than the DBQ one. All right, let's talk about how to actually pick a question. So this is what the questions are going to look like on your actual exam. They are going to be one of 3 questions that you get to pick from. And what you're going to notice is that all 3 of these questions are going to be within the same sort of like historical process, historical thinking skills. And another thing I want to notice, because I didn't mention this with the DBQ, is that they do give you kind of a rough outline of a rubric at the front of your at the top of your like before your topics. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. At the top of the page before your actual questions here. All right, and this is going to highlight all of the major things that you need to be doing within your LEQ. All right, so this is kind of a rough rubric. I still like to draw out the rubric. I still think you guys should know the rubric really well, but there you go. So you get a choice of 3 questions from all 3 different time periods. So we can look. These are the ones from the 2019 Euro exam, so 2 years ago. All right, so the first question is evaluate the most significant effect of state centralization by European monarchs during the period 1450 to 1648. So during the first period of European history. All right, question 2, evaluate the most significant effect of population growth in Europe within the period 1700 to 1800. All right, so within the end of period 2 into the start of period 3. Or I guess it's all in period 2, because period 2 ends in 1815. And then question 4, evaluate the most significant effect of the Great Depression in Europe during the period 1929 to 1950. All right, so 1929, end of World War I, effectively, right? 10 years after the war, but the start of the Great Depression up through the end of World War II. All right, and what you'll notice is that all of these questions, all three of these questions have the same basic structure. They are asking about the most significant effect of an event on Europe, okay? And that is how the LEQ is going to be set up. It's going to ask you guys about the most significant effect of an event on your, or not, it's going to ask you the same basic thing, right? So in this case, it's the same. It's what is the most significant effect of this event on European history, but it could ask you, compare and contrast these two things. How did this thing change over time, right? It could ask you any number of those things, but they're going to ask you have the same basic sort of bones and structure with different time periods and different events thrown in, okay? And you'll also notice that we have one question from period 1, one question from period 2, and then one question from period 4. All of these questions, you're never going to have an insane amount of crossover, right? Like, we're not going to see all 3 questions effectively be from period 1. We're not going to see all 3 questions effectively be from period 3. While you might have a little bit of crossover, right? Like some of the dates might like tread into another period, right? So for example, the second question almost treads into period 3, right? And that might happen, but the whole idea is that each of these 3 questions is from a different time period. Now, if you're looking at this, if I'm a student and I'm reading these 3 questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about which question can I provide the best evidence for, and which question do I just generally feel more comfortable with. Those are the things that I would really ask myself here. And so if I was reading this, just personally, I would probably go and I would probably tackle question 4, because question 4 is asking about the effects of World War I, and it's asking about the effects of the Great Depression. And it's also talking about World War II, right? It goes to 1950, which is through the end of World War II. So I'm probably going to answer question 4. That's just me personally. I'm going to have the best evidence for that. But what you need to do is you need to think about which question am I going to be able to answer the most confidently? Okay. Which question am I going to be able to answer the most confidently? If you feel really, really comfortable with period 1, do not try to don't try to be in this position where you're like, the period 1 question, it's a little bit tougher maybe than the period 4 question. Maybe I should just do the period 4. Confidence is going to be your best ally with the LEQ. Pick the question you're going to be most confident with, right? Or flip side of that, you might feel really good about period 1 and you're reading this and the period 1 question you have no idea about, but the period 3 question you might be able to answer. Don't force yourself into answering the period 1 question just because you feel confident about period 1. You need to do the question that you're most confident with, okay? That's my best advice. Can you provide evidence? Can you write with confidence? Can you write like you know what you're talking about? All right. That's the best advice that I can give. Don't feel like you need to put yourself confine yourself within a specific time period. But at the same time, if you're really confident with period 1, don't get scared off with the question. Take a deep breath. Think about what evidence you can apply, and tell yourself, I know the answer to this. Okay, I can do this, right? Just be confident. Confidence is going to win out here. All right. Any questions for me as we head into the last 10 minutes here? All right, so what I want to do is I do want to look a little bit at how LEQs are actually graded here. All right. Kind of just for brevity and sort of just to kind of keep us keep us all in check here, time wise, we're not going to actually open this up, or actually I guess we can. I guess we have time. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hi, everybody. And then I'm going to share a Cram tab. Where are we at here? Here we go. Boom. All right, we should all be able to see this. So this is totally publicly accessible. These are the scoring guidelines for the 2019 free response questions. And we are actually going to go, I want to go to the question 4 for the long essay question. Yeah, here we go. So this is question 4 for the long essay question. So this is the, and I'll enlarge here so we can see. So evaluate the effects of the Great Depression on Europe during the periods of 1629 to 1650. And what we can see here is that College Board provides really, really good overviews of exactly how each of these parts is going to be graded. All right. So for example, here's a good thesis that would earn the thesis point. Although most countries recovered from the effects of the Great Depression, the most significant effect included the economic devastation countries faced because it damaged the living conditions and caused political unrest leading to World War II. All right. So right here, what they said is that the Great Depression helped cause World War II, but they also gave a little bit more in explaining how that happened, right? They talk about the economic devastation and they talked about the damaging of living conditions, which caused political unrest. Okay, so here's another example of a good thesis. The most significant effect of the Great Depression in Europe from 1929 to 1950 was causing rising political extremism due to uncertain circumstances in the lives of all Europeans, and especially embracing larger governments and more government-controlled economies. All right, so right here, same deal. They went beyond just saying that the Great Depression had an economic impact on European countries. They actually went on to explain the full impact that the Great Depression had, the full economic impact that the Great Depression had, right? Leading to an embracing of government-controlled economies and embracing of political extremism. Okay. So contextualization, how you would earn the contextualization point for this, talking about Treaty of Versailles, German reparations, World War I in general, Weimar Republic, United States loans and investment in Europe with the Dawes-Young Plan, the stock market crash in 29, the age of anxiety in the roaring 20s, New Deal, League of Nations, pre-1929 Hitler-Nazi Party, talking about Mein Kampf. Now, there's a lot of stuff you can talk about. The big thing, though, is you got to connect it to the larger topic, right? All right, now for evidence and supporting argument. Okay, there's lots of different evidence that you can use here. You can talk about the Reichstag fire, the Enabling Act. You can talk about the World War II and the Holocaust, Mussolini's and fascist Italy, communism as an alternative to capitalism, creation of the welfare state, Stalin's 5-year plan, appeasement, the Nuremberg laws, anti-Semitic policies, right? There's a lot of different stuff you can talk about here. What you'll notice is that with this evidence that they say your thumbs up good to use, is that none of this is really that specific. It's all pretty general, because remember, they are not expecting you guys to come in with this like super in-depth wealth of knowledge. They just aren't. Okay. Instead, they want you guys to have some evidence that you can bring in, but the evidence itself does not need to be super, super specific. But remember, you need to actually connect this to your argument, right? So if your argument is that the Great Depression led to economic uncertainties and the rise of political extremism, you might say, that an example of this political and economic extremism would be Stalin's 5-year plan that eventually resulted in collectivization of farming and the death of millions of people, right? So not only bringing in Stalin's 5-year plan, but also talking about how it was an example of larger government-controlled economies and economic and political extremism. All right, and then lastly here, historical reasoning. You get 1 point if you talk about if you frame your argument within the historical reasoning itself, like within the in this case the cause and effect. And then you get the second point by looking at complexity. Okay. And so for the cause and effect, right, you might establish your argument by establishing a relationship, a causal relationship between the Great Depression and the rise of Hitler. You might, just talking about the fact that the Great Depression eventually led to something, right? Establishing that relationship between the Great Depression leading to the rise of political and economic extremism, or whatever you're arguing. And then for the complexity point, there's a lot of different stuff you can talk about here. Explaining how multiple countries underwent different changes and were variously impacted as a result of the Depression. Explaining the most significant effect of the Great Depression, such as the rise of Hitler or World War II, while noting that other effects, such as increased government intervention, were also significant and interrelated. Qualifying or modifying an argument by considering evidence that supports an alternative position, such as suggesting that fascism would have developed independently as a result of German dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Versailles, right? I said that earlier, that, arguing that something would have happened eventually regardless of this effect, something you could totally do. But all this, it's looking beyond the surface layer, right? It's looking beyond that surface layer of history and making way more, I'll say, advanced sort of observations about the historical process. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. What I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and look at open up the Chrome tab here. I am going to go ahead and look at kind of some of my big tips and takeaways. So these are my quick tips here. So these are 4 things that I think you can do on the LEQ to play for maximum points. And my first one is play for points. Make sure you know the rubric. Make sure that you know it well. Remember, with the DBQ and the LEQ, all right, this is all about playing for points. It's all about knowing the rubric and doing the things on the rubric that you are supposed to do. All right, have your thesis that actually answers the question. Have your good contextualization, so on and so on. Number 2 is pick a question and stick with it. Do not backtrack and pick a new question, right? Don't get halfway through your LEQ and then say, oh God, I actually don't know this. I'm going to go back and do another question, because you are absolutely just shooting yourself in the foot there. Okay, don't do that. Number 3, if you have a total of 1 hour and 40 minutes to complete both the DBQ and the LEQ. Make sure to manage your time. It might be smart to do the LEQ first and then complete the DBQ. This is something you're totally allowed to do. Do the LEQ first and then go back and do the DBQ. If you read the LEQ question and you're like, oh yeah, I can knock out the LEQ in 20 or 30 minutes, no problem. That might be smart, because that's going to give you guys a little bit of extra time on the DBQ, which you'll probably need more than extra time on the LEQ. But again, that's personal preference, whatever seems good to you, right? Whatever is going to work for you. You might be one of those people that's like, nope, I need to do it in the order that it's presented to me. That's super fine too. And lastly, number 4, answer the question by providing claims and then backing up the claims with evidence. Do not just provide evidence and not have claims, okay? Whenever you're writing an argumentative evidence-backed essay, it's almost like a triangle. At the top, you have your argument. Below your argument, you have claims. And below your claims, you have evidence, right? So you're going to have one argument. You're going to have maybe 3 claims. And then you're going to maybe have like 6 pieces of evidence, right? 2 pieces of evidence for each claim. All right, so it's like a triangle, right? 1 claim or 1 argument, 3 claims, 6 pieces of evidence. All right, and you need to have all of those pieces in order to have a really functional argument. All right, Hannah, you asked, just in like the writing of an LEQ, is it better to add a lot of content or to make it flow better? That's a really good question. I think with the LEQ, you want to make it flow better. Stuffing in a lot of content with the LEQ can sometimes lead to an LEQ that feels really dysfunctional and disjointed. I think that if you have 6 solid pieces of evidence, 2 pieces of evidence for each claim, or if you have 4 claims, or if you have 2 claims having 4 solid pieces of evidence, you're going to be in really good shape, right? I would honestly recommend to have only 2 claims, right? I know I said 3 claims earlier, but I think really honestly, you really only need 2 claims. And with that, you really only need like 2 pieces of evidence per claim to have a good LEQ. All right, your LEQ should not exceed more than like 2.5, 3 pages max, depending on how large you write. I think some students get really, really like bogged down in like writing everything that they know, and that could end up resulting in like a 5-page LEQ. The reality is that the readers, the guys and girls that are grading this thing, they don't really want to read a 5-page LEQ. They would much rather have a very clear, concise, to the point LEQ. Is there a curve on the AP exam? Oh, yes, the mysterious AP curve. Yeah, they usually do curve scores pretty much every year. That, as far as I'm aware, this is something that happens super, super behind closed doors. So even those that are grading these things don't really have that kind of information. But supposedly there's a curve that happens every single year. I would not get bogged down or concerned with that at all. Instead, I would really, really focus on just doing what you can do to score a 5, right? Because that's our goal, is to get a 5 on this thing. And doing everything you can do to really, really maximize your points. Do we need a counter argument or conclusion for the LEQ? Conclusions, in my opinion, this is solely my opinion, conclusions are optional. You might have a teacher, like your Euro teacher might have told you need to have a conclusion. In that case, listen to them, have a conclusion. However, conclusions really don't do that. You notice on the rubric, there is no point for conclusions. All right. What you can do is you can always restate your thesis within your conclusion, and that kind of like covers you. You have your thesis stated twice in your LEQ. That way, if a reader doesn't like your first thesis in your intro paragraph, but you restate your thesis in a really great way in your conclusion, you'll still get the thesis point. I say only write a conclusion if you have time to, but don't get bogged down with it. Counter arguments are really where you can get that complex understanding point. Generally speaking, counter arguments are really good to have in argumentative research papers, but it's not super necessary here. But it could help you get that complex understanding point for sure. All right. So what now? Cram finale is May 6th, and I want to hear what you want to cover. This is the link to the Google form that I made a few days ago. You can scan that QR code. It will take you right there. It will take you like literally 30 seconds to do, and I would really, really, really appreciate if you guys all get that done. It's going to help me a lot in planning this thing. If you've already done it, thank you. You're a rock star. I appreciate you. But if you haven't done it yet, fill it out real quick. I would really, really appreciate if you guys did. So that's the QR code right there. And then of course, Discord. I cannot, stop talking about the Discord. I feel like it's such a good thing for the community. It really allows us to connect and work together. So make sure that you join the Discord. Keep it going in there. Charlie's going to be in the Discord after the session today, talking about LEQs, talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. And I, of course, have to give another shout out to Charlie here. Charlie really, really does a lot of the behind the scenes work. Charlie's the TA for the course. And so, definitely hop into Discord, talk some more about LEQs. But it's 7:03. Time's up for me. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys get on out of here. I appreciate all of you that hung out and joined in on the conversation, or just hung out, even if you're not having an LEQ on the exam and just wanted to get a little bit more information. I appreciate you guys being here on a Friday night, especially. And yeah, like Charlie said, if you guys would rather talk about content, it is kind of an open space for whatever you guys want to talk about. Okay. All right. I'm going to let you guys get out of here. Have a great rest of your night. I will see you guys on Thursday for 5 hours. 5-hour gang. Have a good weekend. Have a good night, guys. I will see you guys later.